Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about ISO and film speed, formerly known as ASA or DIN. You've probably heard of it. I will explain it to you in 15 minutes in this free lecture. It's all about understanding the basics. I'm not getting too technical and it's just about understanding the basics and fundamentals. I have a new video here every week on the channel, so make sure to like and subscribe if you like the content. And now we are going to talk about ISO and film speed. It is one of three important ingredients to perfect exposure, and nothing you can actually come around or work around, so you really need to understand what it is. So let's start with the pure definition of ISO. Might be a bit dry, but it's important to understand where it comes from. So ISO is basically the modern and globally accepted standard for film and sensor sensitivity in both film and digital photography, and we are talking about light sensitivity here. ISO is, as I mentioned already, one tool to work with when it comes to exposure and the exposure triangle, which we will cover much more later on in this series. And it's really, really important. ISO is representing as a number, so 100, 200, 400. A lower ISO number indicates lower sensitivity to light, a higher number indicates higher sensitivity to light. So the lower the value, the lower the light sensitivity, the bigger the value, or the higher the light sensitivity. DIN ASAR is a bit ancient, just to mention where it comes from. ASAR has been the American standard, so it's basically one-to-one what ISO is now, and it was used before ISO became the global norm. The ASAR and the ISO scale are indifferent, so they are basically the same, as I said. And ASAR is no longer actively maintained or updated, as the standards should change at some point, ASAR will not. DIN is the, let's say the German or European equivalent to it, and it was a bit different, so it was a logarithmic scale. So for 3 DIN values, the equivalent to doubling or halving the film speed in ISO. So DIN 21 would be ISO 100, for example, and DIN 24 would be ISO 200. What these numbers mean, we'll come to that in a minute, but let's move on. This is just so that you have heard of it. Right now we're just talking ISO. And here we are. A really important thing is native ISO. So the term native ISO refers basically to the baseline, to the default sensitivity setting of your camera's digital sensor. So this is the ISO setting at which the sensor operates optimally, providing the best image quality. Why quality, we'll come to that in a minute as well, in terms of signal to noise ratio and dynamic range. So for the native ISO, check the technical datasheet of the camera body or the manual. It is different from sensor to sensor, okay? So at this point, at this setting, the sensor is not amplifying the signal too much or at all, and this will result in really crisp images not be changed by an ISO. How ISO is affecting your image quality, I will show you that on hands-on here in the video, but with the native ISO setting, if you put your setting to the native ISO, that meant, you will get the best results in terms of noise and optimal dynamic range related to your ISO settings. So you take advantage of your full capacity, basically, without doing any amplifications. Sometimes you just cannot work with the native ISO because it's just too low, so you have to do it. In the analog world, you would just change the film accordingly. If you know you are going to have a shooting at night or in dark circumstances, you will have the need of another film. And in digital photography, you will have the need of higher ISO. That means you have to go off the native ISO, but that in a minute. So noise, you've probably heard of it. And as you increase the ISO beyond the native setting, that's why I told you about the native ISO, the camera applies analog or digital amplification to boost the signal from the sensor. That happens most likely electronically. So you just, in a sense, it's not technically correct, but you overcharge it in a means to get an idea of what you're doing. So while this allows you for shooting in lower light conditions, it introduces more so-called noise into the image. Therefore, you can shoot basically in darker areas. However, noise or grain it was called in the analog world, it can supply a specific aesthetic style, so you can even use it or edit in a picture in Photoshop or any editing program, especially in black and white photography. In digital black and white, some people tend to add noise or grain to the image just to make it, to give it the feel of the analog, right? So in the analog world, it actually was a chemical process on the film which reduced in more grain. You see the example picture here in the dark areas, that's what's called grain. And ISO creates this grain due to its amplification and basically overcharging of your sensor. It's not overcharging, it's not technically correct, but I sacrifice technically correctness here to just give you an idea what's happening as a process without getting too mathematical. We will follow up with some examples to get a bit away from the PowerPoint slide here. So in the following figures, I show you a comparison of ISO 100 to ISO 2000 or 205,000 on a Nikon Z6 with ISO denoise and long exposure denoise deactivated. So cameras can work against the noise, and they usually have a denoise inbuilt. I deactivated that to show you what's actually happening, and I use the same aperture to guarantee the same depth of field. What that means in detail, if you're not familiar with this terminology, make sure to like and subscribe, because I will cover all of that in different small lectures, like 15 to 20 minutes ish, to understand all that basics you need to know in photography technically. So every sensor has an own ISO behavior. That's really important, and every camera's inbuilt noise reduction works differently well. So just because a Nikon Z6 will have certain results, a Nikon Z7 or Canon or Sony Alpha will have different results on different settings. So that's really important. You cannot take it for given, but you should also, if you get a camera, I can just highly suggest you to, before you really start shooting, and especially if you want to start getting more into it, start shooting with it and make some comparisons like I will do now. So the more expensive the camera, usually, the better the noise behavior. Usually, that's not given. Like I could have taken my D300 from 15 years ago and I will have a lot more terrible results in the example images from what you will see here. And yeah, that is the processors and sensors and post-processing gets better. But note also, while shooting a RAW, you will be required to do denoising and post-production no matter what. Like depends a bit on your RAW settings, but usually you will have to denoise because that should be turned off when you have RAW settings done. So let's go into it. Yeah, here you see I took that on a winter night. It was actually pitch black outside, a dark night. So I went from ISO 100 to a pretty high ISO. And now you can also see the differences. I think the video compression will soften this out a bit. If I would print this out like on a professional laboratory, you will see a lot of stripes here. The video might tone down, and also the contrast of your screen you're watching this on might soften the result here, but usually you should see a lot of different stripes here, and I hope it comes out what I want to show you. So I had to go through a lot of exposure times here, as you can imagine, and I've also kept the same aperture all the time just to make sure to get the same depth of field. So on the very left we have a very low ISO, and you can see it distinguishes already from 100. There's a pretty clear cut to it. Even though it's correctly exposed or has the same exposure. From 50 to, or from 100, which is somewhat natural here, 100 to 1600, you shouldn't see, I think it's acceptable quality without big noise, but as more as you go to the right side, like 6400 or 3200, I will get a closer look in a second, you will see increasing image noise. On a color picture, right, take the 5205,800 for example. On the very right, you see a lot of pixels. This is called noise. So from 64 to 205, it really becomes unacceptable to work with. It softens a bit once you actually use denoise, and you can denoise in post-production as well. But the noise also destroys image informations which you will not be able to recover, not even with RAW. And like noise, like in the last 3 lines, for example, 51, 200, if you use denoise, you can get a bit back, but it's just mathematically calculated, so you will lose that image information as it is naturally. So the processors are doing a pretty good job in getting it back to what it looked like before the noise, but yeah, it is pretty heavy. And as you see on the very right side, it's just a sky full of stars basically, and it's green, yellow, red dots, blue dots, whatever it might be. And especially the image even tends to be a bit out of focus, but it is in focus, but it seems so because the image noise actually destroys clear lines, and you get the feeling that it's kind of even blurry, right? That's a personal reception here, but yeah, that's for ISO comparison in one shot. So I took basically 16 or 13 pictures and put them next to each other, and also deleted out the specific parts to give you an idea of what kind of impact it has. I will upload this image on my Discord I've just created. I'm a pretty new channel, so I would be happy to have you there and take a look at it on your own, and you will see there. Here I have the same noise reduction disabled, long exposure and ISO noise reduction. This is a color checker, and you can see what it actually does to the color. Here, yeah, it even changes the color tone, right? As you see, so the yellowish, even if you cannot recognize so much noise in the yellow part, it feels like it's almost another color. It's a brighter color, even though it's correctly, like it's the same exposure level, but the color seems to be a bit brighter, and it is noisy. It's just not good. Here we have black and white. It was not about getting focus here or centering the spider lens cowl. It's more about to give you an idea of the clear lines. Like in the black area, you can see actually a difference. So I have top left is clear, top bottom corner is with high ISO, top right corner is with high ISO, bottom right corner is without. And if you see in the background of the image, and there you have really high image noise as well. So you really lose, even in the pitch blacks or blacks, and even in the whites, you can see some change to the color here. Another example is this chart here, and you can see it's almost, as I said before, it almost changes the color, gives you a different perception of the color in terms of brightness and even toning. Even though these are the same colors on the same exposure, they completely look different, especially in the grays, dark grays, and the white almost seems shellish if you want so. So yeah, that's what ISO can do to your photo. So let's summarize. Simplified definition, down there you can see the definition you will find on Wikipedia. I will make it simplified for you. Film speed, or ISO, is the light sensitivity of your film or sensor which trades sensitivity for grain or so-called noise. In ISO, it is a linear effect, so 200 ISO needs half the light as 100 ISO. So here's a small reference again. We've seen this already, and this is just to really empathize the increase of noise, which is going hand in hand with the increase of the ISO value. The higher the value, the higher the ISO, the more grain, the more noise you will have, no matter in dark or bright parts of the image. So the ISO stops, as you've already seen, are always doubling. It's linear almost. So we go from a 50 to 100, from 100 to 200, from 400 to 800. You can have values in between in your camera, most likely in thirds, but each of these steps, 100 to 200, 400, 800, 1600, each step will double or halve the light sensitivity in the sensitivity sense, okay? So summary, as we said, the smaller the value, the lower the light sensitivity, the bigger the value, the higher the sensitivity, and the more noise you have. And ISO is one tool, or corner if you want so, of the exposure triangle, which makes it one of the main aspects of exposure and really, really important to understand how to handle this. As I said, it's a linear effect, which with each step doubles or halves the amount of light you need, just to make it a little bit more understandable. It's technically not 100% correct, but yeah, just for you to understand it. It's really simple once you get into it. So eventually we finish off here. I think 15 minutes is fine. I've explained the basics. Hope it wasn't too dry. I'm pretty new to this, so I would be happy if you could leave a comment or critique. Constructive feedback would be welcome. And if you like this, make sure to like and subscribe, because I have a video every week coming here. This will also be available in Spanish. English is my second, almost third language, so be kind and let me know what I could do better. So till the next time, and thanks for watching.